It seems weird to talk about abundance during a time of shortage, I know. But just like staying on your couch right now can literally help save the world, shifting away from a scarcity mindset can help make podcasting better. Hello and welcome to another Podcast Pontifications with me, Evo Terra. I owe all of you an apology for last week's episodes. More than a few of you wrote very nice things to say. Thanks for the information, but personally I felt it was a bit of a downer. And I guess that's to be expected, but I want to do something different this week. I'm going to try my level best to not do that again. I guess wallowing around in the mud for a while is okay, but I want to be done with that, please, and thank you. So I've got a few things written down that I want to talk about for this week, and today on the program, I want to get into this topic of abundance, an abundance mindset, as opposed to a scarcity mindset. You see, it's partly a scarcity mindset that got us in this trouble, so I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about what's the opposite of that, abundance. Now, abundance doesn't mean free forever and available to anybody who wants it. It kind of means that, but that's not actually what it means. Abundance means there's more than you can deal with. That's really the short version of what abundance means. There's more than you yourself could possibly consume, if in fact you wanted to, but that of course puts it back into a supply and demand thing. I want to get away from that, but anyhow. Abundance, the opposite of scarcity. Now, I'm a fan of scarcity in some things, and in fact, later on this week, we might talk a little bit about scarcity. I make this show 10 minutes long on purpose. That is a scarcity drop, which makes it tighter. It makes it better. Scarcity is good in some cases. But I want to switch thinking about scarcity into one of abundance. Because as podcasters, we actually can approach our craft with an abundance mindset over a scarcity mindset. Because we know really the only factor in podcasting that is constrained in any way is time, right? I mean, 24 hours, the sun has shifted once again, and there's a brand new day in front of us. So time is really what's the big limiting factor. And yes, of course, there's some money factors that go into that, but really that doesn't matter at the end of the day. You can do a lot with a very, very low investment. It's the time that is really the limiting factor here. But other than that, abundance abounds, if you will. Just like, we go outside, we don't think about breathing in the air. Most of us don't. Of course, the people who live on the streets of Mumbai might have a different story. But by and large, breathing, it's free. It's an abundance. We have an abundance of air, so we don't think about it too much. Drinking water. We turn on the tap, water works. Of course, that doesn't happen everywhere. There are giant water shortages around the world. If you're in Flint, Michigan, clearly that's still a dangerous thing. But you get the idea of what I mean by abundance. And our approach to those things is not necessarily one of lackadaisical attitude. It is one of, these things are just here, so what can I do now? I don't have to think too much about it from that scarcity mind point. And I want us to think about podcasting from that abundance level as well. And here's why. Let me just get to the crux of why it's important. When you shift away from scarcity mindset to abundance thinking, you get a couple of changes in your attitude. One, you personally switch to a generosity mindset rather than a selfishness mindset. You're not hoarding things. When podcasting becomes abundance, you become generous with your opinions, with your ideas, with your help. Whatever it is, you can be generous with that. There's no need in hoarding things because, again, nearly unlimited. There is an abundance of that out there. Trying to keep it all for you as it's some weird zero-sum game, some economic play, makes no sense. You can't hoard any of this information. I mean, I suppose you could, but that is not good for you or anybody else. You become generous. Generosity wins out over selfishness when you take an abundance mindset. The second big shift, when you think of abundance in podcasting and you podcast from a place of abundance, is that you get an activism mindset. Ooh, that's a scary word. I'll come back to it. An activism mindset versus one of ignorance. Going back to my examples of fresh air and clean water. It is abundant for most of us, this idea of fresh air and clean water, at least most of us listening to this program, but not everyone. And the fact that we know that not everyone can enjoy the abundance that we do is what drives us to take action, not just self-centered action on our own show, but action overall, that activism that I speak with. We want podcasting to be better in an abundant place. We don't want people coming in and making it worse, whether that's from predatory ideas or just terrible notions of what things should be, or whatever your own thing is. You want to protect that abundance. Instead of being ignorant, which means, well, I don't care about those things because those challenges, that new service and that new way of doing things doesn't impact my podcast, so I'm just going to bury my head and focus in right down on this and be ignorant about these changes. You can't. When you make a shift to an abundance mindset, you want to protect that abundance for all, which makes you more active. Not necessarily as crazy active as me, but nonetheless pretty active when it comes to that. You will look at all of these things impacting your world and making sure that it continue to stay abundant. So that's why I want you to think about changing your perspective so that you podcast from a place of abundance versus a place of scarcity. Because I want you to be generous with however you can be generous with your thoughts and your ideas and your opinions and not keep them self-centered. And I want you to become more activist mindset, thinking about the overall podcasting ecosystem as a whole and how we keep it healthy and hale. And here's the deal. We don't have to agree on what it means to keep it healthy and hale. In fact, we probably don't. We don't have to agree on what generosity means. In fact, we probably don't. It's just that we're going to do it because all of those things, all of our different ideas will work to make podcasting better if we can abandon the scarcity mindset. Now, I've got some more things to say about this later on this week. Again, apologizing for the downerness of the last week's episodes. This week's will be significantly more upbeat, back to the normal Evo. I hope that is my goal. And of course, if there's someone out there who needs to hear this message, I would really like it if you would share my podcast with just one person. Just another working podcaster that you know of that may not listen to this program. I would really appreciate it if you would go to that person and say, hey man, forget the last 4 weeks' episodes because that was a big downer. But right now, there's this cat named Evo, and he does this show called Podcast Pontifications, and he's thinking about things differently. Would you please take a listen? I would really, really appreciate that. And from that, with that, all of those things, I'm going to go and work on my abundance of time. I don't have an abundance of time. You don't either. But I shall be back tomorrow with yet another Podcast Pontifications. Cheers.